and welcome to the YouTube channel Starship Troopers German Division. I got the opportunity to take an interview with Michael Ironside. You all know him, of course, as our Lieutenant Raszak.
Ratcats, roughnecks!
Right. I talked with him, of course, about Starship Troopers, but also how he came in touch with the movie business. And finally, he has also a message to all you, the Starship Troopers fans. Therefore, take a look on it. So first would be how you came in touch with the movie business. So is there a story behind? Was it a planned career or was it rather driven by chance? So if I am right informed, before you was a craftsman, so especially
I call it a craft.
for roof constructions.
Oh, I do everything. How I got into doing theater and acting and stuff. Where I came from, very poor, working class, very poor. Our house was only 12 feet wide, like from the edge of that table to there, and straight, and very small, and it's row housing, all in a row in the neighborhood. And in that little house was 5 kids, my mom, my dad, my grandfather, a dog, a cat, and some birds. Mm-hmm. So it was very crowded.
Okay.
And the only place we had privacy, because it's always crowded, and never had my own bedroom. We all had to share bedrooms and everything. 1 bathroom. And now my mom and dad worked very hard to give us lots of love, lots of support, lots of everything. It had nothing to do with finances. But what they did give me was the ability to escape through books. Mm-hmm. So my dad even took a second job on the weekends, working for a book press company, small one. And now back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in Canada, and 70s, if a book was to be sold in Canada, it had to be pressed in Canada. It had to be made in Canada. So they would send up all the pressings for all the Penguin books, all the Charter books, all these different books. And my dad was allowed, part of his job, he did it just to get the books, was very minimal pay, but he was allowed to keep all the off prints, the ones that were test prints. So we had thousands of books all over the house. And in my mom's bedroom, above their bed were all these stacks of books that they haven't read, but as they read them, they put them on the floor beside the wall on their bedroom. And we could read anything from there. And
so it's a kind of library in the house.
Very much so, but I remember reading Lady Chatterley's Lover at, I think I was 11 years old or 10 years old. Mm-hmm. Do you know what Lady Chatterley's Lover is?
Yes. So I know the movie.
I didn't know what an orgasm was.
Mm. Okay.
And I went to my mom and dad in the bedroom and I said, "What's an orgasm? Is it a flower?" And I remember my mom going, "You're handling this one, Bob," like to my dad. And I remember my dad tried to explain it to me. And I was 11 years old and I went, "What? Ooh." You know, but he says, "Maybe you should be reading that." I said, no, let me finish it. It's really good. I like to carry it. So reading became an escape. I could go behind the couch, you know. We didn't have a TV until I was like 10 or 11. No television. In 1959, 1961. So I could find a little corner behind a couch, get a book, and read it. And so I love escaping in stories. So this is going to be a long answer.
Okay.
So when I was in school, do you know what precocious means? Precocious means a child who's precocious acts older than they really are.
Oh, okay.
They're like, "Well, how are you? Are you having a good day?" That sort of thing. Mm-hmm. When I was 13 years old, I was writing my autobiography, which is kind of weird.
Okay, yeah.
And the student teacher saw me writing and outside at lunch hour and in between periods. And her name was Judy Millen, and she came up to me and she said, "What are you writing?" And I said, "My autobiography." And she went, didn't laugh. She said, "Can I read it?" I said, "Yeah," and I gave it to her. And the next 2 days later, she had it over the weekend. 2 days, she gave it back to me. She said, "Your descriptive narrative," which is the stuff between the dialogue, is horrible. But your dialogue is brilliant, and your characters are so rich. And I said, "Well, thank you. Okay." And she said, "Have you ever thought of writing a play?" And I went, "Like Shakespeare?" Because that's all I knew was Shakespeare from high school. She said, "No, like Ibsen or Stromberg or," so she said, "Here," she said, "I'll see you tomorrow." So she brought me Strindberg, Ibsen, Schubert, all these different playwrights, right? And these guys will talk for 2 pages of description, and then the character goes, "Y'all, I'm tired." And then they 2 more pages of description. You don't, and it was perfect for me. And I said, "Oh, this is pretty interesting." She goes, "Yeah." And I said, "I didn't know you could do this." She said, "Why don't you write a play? There's a chapter here where you ran away from home for 2 days and we're in a hostel with this old man." And I said, "Yeah." She says, "Why don't you write the play about that?" And I said, "How do I do that?" She said, "Well, the chapter is pretty much a play. The boy enters the shelter, and at the end of it, he leaves the shelter and goes home. There'd been problems at home, and I ran away, and I ended up in the Salvation Army hostel. There was an old man there that they let stay there 24 hours a day, and he tried to convince me to kill him because he was tired of living, and he wanted me to suffocate him with a pillow. I saw 2 men kill another man in the bathroom the first night I was there. I tried to tell the police about it. They didn't want to know. They didn't care. They just wanted, because it was kind of people that were falling through the cracks in society. And I ran home after. I couldn't do it. I put the pillow over the man's head and I was going to hold it down because he had so much wisdom, I thought. So he said, "I'll give you my wisdom if you kill me." And I went, and I couldn't do it. So I ran home. And so that was the play. It was called The Shelter. So I showed it to her, and she said, "It's quite good. It's quite good." I just wrote it up once. And I had this old Underwood, traveling Underwood typewriter. And she took it, and I didn't tell me, she entered a Canada-wide contest with it. Now, every night I would go to work. Every night I would go to clean a factory because we had no money. My dad and my sister when she was 15, but I started cleaning factories at my 12 years old, 11 and 12 years old. And by the time I was 13, I was working 7 hours a night cleaning factories and then going to school in the daytime, which is fine. We needed it. And I would rush home from school, change my clothes, get on the streetcar and the bus and go to work. I'd get home about midnight and then go right to bed and get up in the morning, start all over again. And I came home from school and there was all these men in suits and hats in the kitchen talking to my mother. And I thought, what are the cops doing here? Because, you gotta remember this is 1963, and guys still wore fedoras and ties.
I was even not born.
Yeah. And yeah, good for you. And you got hair too. Look, you got hair. Yeah. But anyway, when I got home, I saw these guys with suits on in the kitchen, and I said to my sister, "I didn't do anything wrong." She goes, "What did you do?" I said, "I didn't do anything wrong. What are they here for?" She goes, I don't know. I said, "Go get my clothes." I didn't want to. So I changed on the veranda, and I went to work. And before I left, I heard my mother say, we can't afford to send our children anywhere physically, but we can send them everywhere in books. And I went, why would the police want to know that? Right? So I got home that night about midnight, and I was tired. And I come in, and nobody's awake. My dad would watch the news every night at 11 o'clock, and at 11:30, he would go to bed. 11 o'clock news, 11:30, go to bed. And it's midnight, and nobody's ever awake when I get home. Sometimes my little sister would be. But I got home, and the kitchen light was on, and I looked, and my dad's sitting there at the kitchen table. And I'm going, oh, fuck. What have I done? And he says, come in here. I said, look, I didn't do anything. I don't know why the police were here. I didn't do anything, Dad. I swear to God, I didn't do anything. And I'd done a lot of shit because of the neighborhood, you know. It was a very rough neighborhood. Very rough. I got stabbed in the back a couple of times. And, it was a rough neighborhood. My parents were very controlling because they want to keep us safe. So they taught us how to, your word has to be worth something. You are your actions. You're not your clothes. You're your actions. You know, and they kept us really close to them. And he said, I said, I didn't do anything. I don't know why the cops were here. My dad went, the cops? What do you mean the police? And I said, those men in hats. And he goes, oh, no, they were reporters from the newspapers. And I went, what's it all about? I don't know. He says, Michael, who's Judy Millen? And I said, this student teacher who, at high school, who was helping me write. She says, well, evidently you won first prize in a Canada-wide contest for writing.
Okay.
This play you wrote. I went, oh yeah, I wrote a play. And he goes, well, there's a controversy. I said, what's the controversy? Or controversy or controversy? He said, she entered it in a university contest, and you came in first. You're 13, the other two people are 24 and 25. And she's trying to she's using you to make a statement. She didn't tell them you were 13. She let your work speak for itself. And you've won first prize. And now it's a controversy, a controversy. And I went, wow. And he said, look, you won first prize, which is, I think it was $5,700 or $6,000. And at that time, in 1963, that was a lot of money. Boom, you know. And second money, $5,700, $6,000, somewhere in there. The second thing was I could pick any workshop in theater in the Toronto area to do my play. They would produce it.
But how long you needed to realize this?
This is all one
situation?
night. This is all one night. And then he said the third part of the prize is you get a lifetime membership at Hart House Theatre in Toronto University, very prestigious theatre. I could go in there anytime. And I said, well, what do you want? He says, I gotta tell you what. The two older men, boys, so one second of the two men, are saying it's not fair because you weren't. They're embarrassed because you were chosen over them, and though you're half their age. He says, but I got an idea. And I said, what? He said, would you like to see your play produced? And I said, yeah, I'd like to see it. Yeah, okay. He says, well, give them the money. They can split the money between them. You get to see your play on stage, and you get to go to Hart House. You can always make money, but when will you get a chance to see your play? And I said, okay, then you think that's what? He says, yeah. So he wrote up the letter, because this had come in the mail. He wrote the letter and like that, and I signed it, and he sent it off. And they went for it. Second and third people split the money. And the play was produced in Toronto. Didn't run very long. The Toronto Workshop Theatre a year later, 2 years later, asked me if I had another play. I had another one I wrote, and they produced it. And wow, you know, that was 50, 60 years ago. 57 years ago. Fuck. So I started as I became a writer.
Yeah.
And at one point, this is a long answer, I told you. You gotta ask very specific questions. You asked a very wide question.
Yeah.
So,
I understood already.
so, one day I was, a friend of mine who was also a writer, he had one of his plays at an acting studio, and the young actors were doing it. He said student actors were doing it. They weren't students, they were like human, like grown-up people. Some well-known actors. It was like for a guy named Eli Brill in Toronto. He was out of New York and he'd come to Canada. And he said, they're going to do two of my scenes from my play tonight. Do you want to come along? I said, absolutely. So I went and I wanted to see what they were doing, scene study. And I was sitting there and it hit me like, boom. I'm like a musician who writes music, but I don't have any instrument to play the music. I don't know anything about the actual vehicle that transports my work to the audience. So after I saw his play, which was okay, but I went up to the teacher afterwards and I said, I'd like to take acting lessons. He said, why? And I told him, I said, I don't know anything about the actual acting. And he said, okay, that's a good reason. And I started studying acting with him and writing. And I ended up being a writer and an actor. And sometimes I produce and sometimes I direct. But mostly producing, mostly acting now. And that's not true. I've got about 6 scripts that are out there right now that have all been optioned. But it's been fairly, though here, I want to finish this off with one thought. It only hit me about 10 years ago, well, maybe longer. I think I was about 45 years old. It's a long time ago, it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. 45 or 50. I was sitting there one day, and I had to pay out some cash to somebody, and I was bundling up the cash and stuff, because they wanted cash, they didn't want, it was not a drug deal. But I was counting out the cash, and it was looked like a lot of money, it was $3,000, and I went, wow, 3,000, and I started crying, because when my father said, give them the $6,000, don't you want to see your play produced? He had never seen $6,000 in one place in his whole life. He only made about $5,700 a year at that time. You know what I mean? And maybe $9,000 at that time. We had to work at night to keep everything going. So here's a man who said, they can have the money. He wouldn't say, yeah, you make money. He said, forget about the money. And it still gets me, it still makes me emotional that my father would be that understanding of the universe, that way of embracing me as an artist or a writer or a son. And it's pretty wonderful. So anyway, that's a long answer to your one question.
Yeah, but partially you answered already some next stuff. So I would like to go more specific in the direction to Starship Troopers, because this is most of interest of us. And here I have the question concerning the character of Mr. Raszak, so which you have played in Starship Troopers, and Raszak had a stable position in the society as a teacher, but as well as also in the military life as a lieutenant in between kids. So, and the question is, what was the preparation to play this double-sided character? So part you answered already, so related to your experience to the books and all this reading.
I read Starship Troopers when I was younger. My grandfather, my father's father, was a member of the sci-fi club that was people like A.J. Voigt, the Slam series, Heinlein, Asimov later on when he was older, Aleister Crowley, the Beast, a lot of these people. And I read Dune, Frank Herbert. I read Dune from a shoebox, from loose paper. I opened it up. My grandfather said, "Here, have a read. You might enjoy this." And I opened it up, and it was mimeograph, because they didn't have copy machines in those days. And I read Dune, and then on it said, my grandfather's nickname was Jock. Hey, Jock. And on it said, "Hey, Jock, have a look and see if you can find any bugaboos," which is kind of like, well, Frank Herbert. So I read it, and it's still around. My brother, I think, has the book, has the copy. But, so my grandfather gave me Starship Troopers to read very early. Now, I don't mean to offend in any way, but it was not meant to be thought that the movie is different than the book.
Yes.
A lot.
Yeah.
The book was very much a right-wing manifesto. The author believed that if you weren't willing to do service for your country, you shouldn't be allowed to vote. He was very vocal about that. He did a lot of things. He was very, 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 don't talk ill of the dead, but a lot of his stuff was very, very strange. He even wrote, I think, a book called, a small pamphlet called The Citizen's Handbook, which was the proper way to conduct yourself in society. Very, very frightening ideas. Not anything to do with freedom or education and stuff. So when Paul did it, we'd already done Puerto Rico together. And Paul asked me if I wanted to, he said, he offered me this part. He says, in Starship Troopers, I got it through one of the producers called me up and said, "Paul wants you to play Raszak in Starship Troopers. Do you know it?" And I said, "Oh yeah. Can I talk to Paul?" And Paul, they said, "Why?" I said, "Let me talk to him. Let me read the script. Let me talk to him." So I read the script, and I went in and talked to Paul, and Paul said, "What do you want to talk about?" And I said, "This is a right-wing fascist manifesto. It's meant to be anti-democratic, not representative. It's the whole idea about the strong are more important than the weak, all that stuff." And I said, "What are you doing this for?" And Paul said, "All right, I'll tell you this one time." He said, "I'm going to create a perfect world." He says, "Where the men are beautiful and have abs, and the women are beautiful and they have abs, you know, and everyone's brilliant and happy and bright." He says, and everything's perfect. He said, "It's a perfect world, but it's only good for killing bugs. That's all it's good for. It's not reality." And I went, "Wow, I'm in." Because I like that idea. I like the idea that he was going to go against. So for any of you, I know you guys are really into Starship Troopers, but it's meant as a satire.
Yeah.
You know, it's meant as a satire. Paul is, I'm not speaking for Paul, but Paul was raised at the end of the Second World War, you know, and through the late 40s and early 50s and stuff like that. So he's Dutch. His family knows what war is like and stuff like that. And I think Paul, this is my opinion, Paul, I think Paul likes to do stories where he pushes it in everyone's face. He wants it, and he makes you make up your own mind.
Yeah.
You know, he just sort of, you know, he does it very well, very well. Paul is
Also to provocate.
Pardon?
For provocation.
Not provocation. He kind of, well, maybe provocation in the sense he's forcing you to decide. He's forcing you to take a position. He's not, I don't think he's trying to propaganda or manipulate as much as he's trying to point out what propaganda is. Everyone hated his Las Vegas picture, you know? I thought it was brilliant because it showed how plastic and thin the American dream is. You know, how it's sexual money and plastic breasts and too much makeup and filler in the lips and stuff. And he kind of like took the American dream and blew it up and let people look at it. And they all went, it's not a very good film. You know, Showgirls. I thought Showgirls was quite good. I really did. So
you have to keep a mirror in front of face.
He kind of makes, yeah, I think he wants, I can't speak for Paul. I just know I love working for him, and I think I'm very proud of that.
But I think it was a very good decision to take this character of Raszak, because I think it's a very central character of this story. So of Starship Troopers.
Totally makes sense. No, I get to work with Paul Verhoeven. I get to work with him. Of course, I'd already done Total Recall. Wonderful experience. A lot of work, very hard. Starship Troopers was very hard, very grueling, especially for Paul. But when you get to work with somebody that has the vision that Paul has, how do you say no? You know, you trust that man. You trust what he's doing. Next question.
Are you a fan of science fiction, especially?
Because of my grandfather, I got influenced by a lot of science fiction when I was very early on. So I read a lot of science fiction. The way to look at science fiction, I think, is that if you do something, if you make a movie or you tell a story about social injustice, or about racism, or about rape, or about drugs and guys that are bad and drug dealers and stuff, and you stick people's face in it, it forces people to make a decision. But if you make the drug dealers aliens, and you put them instead of a Cadillac, you put them in a spaceship, you know,
can get some distance from this.
They have a chance to step back and be able to see the story subject matter. And I think that's what science fiction does. It takes everyday problems that most audiences would feel confronted by. Instead of having to sit there and lecture to them, they get the information and possibly another point of view that allows them to maybe see another side of it. You know what I mean? It's important.
Yeah. So you take part on a lot of impressive science fiction productions. So like
I've done a few.
Yeah, Total Recall, Highlander 2. So that's rather fantasy. Elysium. One question came up. So why you had to lose, and why you had in several movies had to lose an arm?
Yes.
So like
No, I lose body parts.
Yeah, body parts. But is there some?
Well, think of it. No. Think of it. They're metaphors for characters. You know, when you can say somebody like, "I'd give my left arm for the country." Mm-hmm. You can say it, but it doesn't mean anything. So if you cut their arm off, he gave his left arm for the company, for the country, right? Or in Raszak in the book is the same way. Most of the characters I play, look, I've only done it twice where I took jobs for the money, and I hated doing them. I really hated doing them. The money, I've got a little boy inside me that likes to go to work, and the little boy inside me got really, really upset going to work after 4 or 5 days of just doing it for the money. It's not fun. I like what I do. The money is like the icing on the cake. The cake is the work. And then the character that plays losing a body part is kind of like a visual metaphor for how the character is damaged. I've played a lot of damaged characters.
Yeah.
A lot of damaged characters. A lot of damaged characters. And I find them interesting. They're the product. Everyone's born, I think you want to get really philosophical. Everyone's born out of love, unless your mother's a crack addict. But everyone's born out of love. Fear teaches you how to survive. You know, you go up and you go, oh, pretty orange and yellow, and then you find out it's a tiger, and it almost kills you. And you go, oh, fuck. Damn it, that's a tiger. I gotta be afraid of tigers. If you survive, fear teaches us how to survive. But my characters that I've played over the years that I've chosen to play are people who have been damaged by their lives. And a lot of time, this is not my choice, but well-written projects and stuff, the characters are visually a representation of their background. I mean, look at Adventures in the Forbidden Zone. I'm covered in makeup and got claws for hands, and I live in a pod and I float around. There's one, I can't remember now, Patient X is a film out there where literally half my body's, this arm's gone, this leg's gone, and all this side is burnt. And they're horrible at editing. The studio recut it. The original film was quite good. But I spent most of the film in this hospital bed with my arm through the bottom of the mattress and this leg out with this prosthetic on, and, you know, and all this makeup. And it's actually based on a true story of soldiers that were damaged during the Vietnam War in Korea, who were held on a base in, I think, Greenland. They were in a coma. They didn't know who they were. They'd been damaged so badly. And some of them started to wake up. And they thought they were still in Vietnam, in Korea. And it's quite a good story, actually, Patient X. I think it's Patient X. But yes, I lose a lot of limbs.
And you said already that Starship Troopers was hard work to make. Is there any movie production, what you could say, which was most fun for you?
They're all fun.
All
of them, yeah. That's why I do it. It's making something out of nothing, like creating stuff. It's like going to work to play. The trick with acting, though, is you play, and if the director says, I like that, you got to do it over and over and over and over again. So you recreate that same moment, you know, because you'll do it in a wide shot, you'll do it in a close-up, you'll do it this, and then you'll do the reverse. So the training is learning how to find something that works, and then recreate it so you do it again and again and again, you know. Is it hard work? Is it exhausting? Yes. But a good exhaustion, you know? It's a good exhaustion.
Work should make always fun, so that it goes fast.
I've done projects where they were disorganized, and the producers were in over their heads. They were in over their heads, so the producers were in over their heads, and they probably should have been producing a film. So you really want everything to run as smoothly as possible. How are we doing for time?
5 minutes.
Okay.
So, we could fire us. So maybe you want to say something, so a kind of message to defense of Starship Troopers. Do you have any?
To defend it?
To defense.
Oh, fans.
To the fans of
fanatics.
Yeah.
Those fanatics. Don't take it too serious. Don't take it too serious. Don't take it too serious.
Don't take it too serious.
Right. You know.
Okay.
Cosplay is wonderful. It really is wonderful. Find something, because all you get together is a club. But don't Don't see it as a political thing, don't see it as a social thing. It's play. Everyone should play. More play, less fighting.
It's a show.
Nice doing this, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Stay focused on important things and don't take it too serious.